if you're watching episode 2.2 of me making my night lights, go back and watch episode 2.1. The project snowballed into a 2-hour long epic, and quite frankly, nobody watches a 2-hour long video, so I had to cut it into 2, possibly 3 parts. So be sure to go back and watch the first one. Actually, watch the very first video, that one's an hour long, showing how I turn the base into, go from a rough piece of lumber into the base, and then this video, which is me putting the electronics in the base. And then the next video is going to be me assembling everything, and then the final frame is going to be the actual finished product. I was going to put the final finished product up, but I don't want to do that. You can fast forward all the way to the end of the very last video and you'll see that, if that's all you want to see. Thanks for watching.
All right. Now I'm just going to clip this one off of here. I'm just going to kiss this one up to God. These are relatively inexpensive. I hate to keep harping on the cost of these, but I'm going to put my political hat on for just a split second here and say that the current status of the American economy is such that every penny is really starting to count. So that's it. I'm not going to get into it any further. Now I actually really don't have a good pair of small gauge wire strippers. These are the smallest ones I have that work pretty well. So the first thing I got to do is I have to trim off the outside of these, which is very tricky. Crappy wire strippers. I know they make better ones. I'm trying to not buy more tools than I need to do this. Okay. Good. I didn't totally damage the insulation on that. Now remember, these are very low voltage, so in the worst case scenario with this is it's just going to it's just going to short out and the LED will end. It's not going to start a fire. If it does, I'd be shocked. Trust me, if somebody can start a fire with one of these things, it'll be me. Okay, now we've stripped our wire back. Now this is like 30 gauge wire. This is like super duper tiny wire, which is kind of good, but it's also a bit of a pain in the ass. All right, now I'm going to go to my cool white with a flat top. Okay, so now I already have these already marked out, and this is the color that I'm going to use, which is cool white with a flat top. I'm going to flip it over. My input voltage is 5 volts because that's what USB-A is 5 volts. If you're not familiar with the USB plugs, I'll go over it again real quick. This is a USB, universal serial bus. 50% of the time you put it in wrong 100% of the time. And so there's a positive and a negative. There's a red and a blue, or I'm sorry, a red and a white. Okay, so red and white is always positive and negative. White is negative, positive is red. I go through and pull out a resistor here. Now, every resistor, all resistors have, they're also rated, okay? So this is 150 ohms plus or minus 5%, and it's 1/4 of a watt. Okay, just, if you don't, just, I'm not going to go through any more of that. Just figure it out yourself or go check it out on YouTube. It just so happens that 100 ohms is what I need. Like I said, I'm not an electronics wizard, but I do know enough to make an LED work, and that's all that matters. I mean, quite frankly, I bought this whole kit. There's, what is it, 700 of these? 1,000 resistors in here. You know, and they all have different purposes. This particular case, I only need the 100. So interestingly enough, well, I have this one out here. So this is a red LED, and red LEDs require much less voltage to work, 2.2 to 2.2, and if you put too much voltage in them, they don't work right. You would think if you put more voltage in it, it'll be brighter. It doesn't work that way. Now, so we're going to pull out one of our LEDs here. These are the flat top white. It's a cool white. I like it. It lends itself nicely to this particular piece. Oh, come on. Why do I charge so much for these? Because I gotta fight to get the bag open. So, you know, we take LEDs for granted, and the truth of the matter is it's a modern marvel. Okay, now, you have to excuse my poor backdrop, but this is the one that I'm going to use. Now, LEDs are directional, okay? And it'll say right on the bag, polarity. So when I say directional, I mean they have a polarity to them, a positive and negative. Diode means power only goes one direction. Light emitting diode. Okay, so the long lead is the positive lead, which is this one, and I'm going to fold this one out of the way here. Yoink. So I know that this one's the positive. As a matter of fact, I'm going to put a little extra little dink in it because I always forget. Okay, so that's the positive. Now, the resistors. Whenever you're doing LEDs, you want to use you want to restrict the power going in. You can, and I have done it, you can restrict the power going out, which kind of does the same thing, but it really isn't too healthy for your electronics to do it that way. I, again, found that out the hard way. I may or may not exploded a whole rack of capacitors one day. And I fried many of these resistors, using them for things that I shouldn't have. Okay, now we have our positive and our negative here. Okay, so I'm gonna just take the resistor leads here, and I'm gonna put this as close as I can to the LED, even though I'm going to have a lot of room to do this particular project. So there's our little wrappity wrap. Now you'll notice I have these holes drilled in the I have holes drilled in this board here because this is a temporary makeshift jig. Oops, because these things want to fly all over the place. So I can stick the LED into this little slot here that I made, and I get a nice flat, and you can see all the little burn marks there. Let me turn my soldering iron on. All my little burn marks that I've used for this. It's going to take a second for my soldering iron to warm up, so I'm going to step back and talk about this for a second. I'm going to take this over, and I'm going to sandblast the bottom of this for a couple of reasons. Oh, I also should add that this is going to go on this base. If you watched part 1 of the video, you'll know that this is the base that I made yesterday, or in part 1 of the video, this is the piece that I made. This is unfinished, and it's not bored yet, so I have to bore this out to the correct diameter. This tubing OD is 10 millimeters OD. So I have to drill the hole out to 3/8 of an inch. And then I have to counter bore the hole also, but not like that. I actually, you'll notice here that this has a taper to it. So this taper needs to be countersunk inside of here. And then I have countersinks to do this with, but literally each time I do it, I have to countersink it a little bit, fit it, countersink it, fit it, countersink it, fit it. If I don't do that, because of the nature of the way that these are constructed, they won't fit right. They'll be crooked. They just won't look correct. So I'm going to, while I'm waiting for my soldering iron to warm up, which actually should be warmed up. Let's see. Now this is just, this is how old this is, Radio Shack. This is just rosin core solder that you can get pretty much anywhere. Even my soldering iron's Radio Shack. That's how old this is. I do have a regular fancy pants soldering rig. I'm not using it right now because I don't need it. This is pretty simple stuff. So if you don't know how to solder, then this project is already beyond your skill set. Now we're just going to do this here. Yeah, I know I'm a little close to the resistor, but that's okay. We're not doing a lot of voltage here, and I'm just going to kind of slick that out a little bit. Okay, now we're good to go there. Now, remember kids, turn your soldering iron off when you leave the house at night. All right, so I'm going to clip these. I'm going to clip this one here real short. Okay. And then I'm going to clip this one here real short. Now, I'm going to attach the negative lead. Okay, so I'm going to go grab some heat shrink. I don't actually have it on, I didn't have it out, but I'm going to go grab a little piece of heat shrink and I'm just going to run it up to here. I don't need to do that. What I actually have been doing is, you know what, I'm going to do it the way I normally do it. Nah, I'm going to put a little piece of heat shrink on there. So one of the, and you'll see this if you take enough electronics apart. I'm going to show it right here. Even though this does have heat shrink on it, they use a lot of glue in these things. And that's actually one of the things I've been doing is I've been putting a drop of glue from here to here to keep it, actually this whole piece here would get glue on it to keep it from shorting out. Okay, so if it can't touch, it can't short. And it's very low voltage, so it's not like it's going to go through. But the other thing I've been doing is just take a piece of tape and just wrap it around it. I only need one wrap. All it has to do is make sure that these two contacts never touch. But I guess a piece of heat shrinking isn't going to break the bank here. Okay, will work by the hair of my chinny chin chin. Okay, now I bought this crap at a old junk shop. It is heat shrink. So I'm going to just take this piece of heat shrink tubing here. I'm going to measure it out a little bit better. And we're going to go there. Clip it off. Now I could buy these pre-wired, and in the future I may consider it, but right now I don't really want to because I don't know. If it's, I don't want to say I don't know if it's worth it, but I don't want to buy. The only way to get this stuff cheap is to buy hundreds, if not thousands of units at a time. And quite frankly, unless these things really take off, oops, it's not, I don't want to have 1,000 LEDs laying around. Okay. Now, I only need to do one side because positive, negative. So I only need to do that one side there. Now what I may do is I bought this stuff again from Chanzan. I had somebody ask me if these were waterproof, and the short answer is absolutely not. These are for indoor use only. Take that, slide that up there. I got to be kind of careful when I do this because I want to be able to slide this heat shrink down a little bit. I should have probably used 2 pieces. I can. I got another piece laying right here. Remember, kids, just like doing a brake line, make sure you put the heat shrink tubing on before you solder the pieces together. Heat shrink does not work well. Heat shrink does not work well when you cut it. How do I know that? Okay. Yeah, I think that's pretty far apart. Now let's just shrink this down a little bit. We're going to shrink this down. I should be using a heat gun for this, but the soldering iron works pretty good. Don't ever use a cigarette lighter to do this with. You see people do it all the time, or an open flame. It doesn't work all that great. Kind of, actually just the opposite. And yes, I'm getting solder all over it. We're going to just wipe the solder off. It'll come right off. Okay. See, solder comes right off. All right, now back into our little jig spot here. Put your heat shrink on. Make sure you put the ferrule on the brake line before you flare the end. How many beautiful brake lines have we flared, guys, and only to find out that we forgot to put the flare on, or put the ferrule on. All right, I'm going to do this pretty tight here. Okay. Oh, my allergies are killing me. Getting old's a bitch, kids. Okay, so that will go there, and then I'm going to spin that a little bit to make it want to lay a little better. I have this chunk of tool steel here I can lay down on there, act as a weight. I don't want it to do its own thing. I want to force it to do what I want it to do. So it takes a second or two to get that squared away. Ah, there we go. Perfect. All right. Now, again with the soldering iron. Now, like I said, these are all hand built. So, and quite frankly, right now these are like prototype. These are production prototypes. So eventually, I'm going to build a decent soldering jig for these, and it'll eliminate a good bit of this futzing. Oh, you bastard. So I actually shrunk the heat shrink tubing, which is going to require some creative trimming there to get rid of that. All right, so I'm going to trim off. We're going to trim off these little legs here. So I'm going to trim the leg off without cutting the actual wire. That looks pretty good. Now I got to take a razor blade. You know what? I might be able to just nip it. Make that sadness go away there. I had a feeling that was going to happen. I'm not going to lie to you. The production pieces are probably going to have glue that acts as the insulator. I just didn't feel like pulling out the hot glue gun. Hot glue works as an incredibly good insulator. The other thing that works really good as an insulator is CA glue. CA glue is a lot faster. The only thing I don't like about CA glue is it gets incredibly hard and brittle. I've had some failures with CA glue over the years. CA glue is crazy glue. The only thing crazy about it is it never works right. Okay, so now we have our second section of heat shrink tubing here. So we are fully insulated. Okay, so now we're fully insulated. And this stuff is so small and so light that if you're ham-handed like I am some days, it's kind of difficult to work with. Oh, the irony of it not wanting to shrink. Okay, after it already shrunk when I didn't want it to. Okay, so we're just gonna... And I guess the particular heat shrink that I'm using right now is not the highest quality. I've only come across 1 or 2 heat shrinks that I really liked, and this ain't one of them. And it's not for lack of trying. Let's put it that way. Okay, so now we're back here. I'm just gonna lay that down in there like that. So this one is so I can put a right angle on these. Some of the bases that I'm using are very small and require an abrupt right angle right here at the LED. This particular one does not, because this is going to slide pretty far up into here, so it doesn't need to be that tight. All right, that's I might want to strip a little bit more off of that there. This video's already way over length, but that's okay. Okay. Muy bueno. I should have probably trimmed these leads back a little bit, or actually trimmed this red one back a little more, but I didn't. So I get to fight with it. Okay. Right there. Now we're going to do a test light, make sure it works. don't know what's wrong with the plug on the battery is bad. Imagine that. That side works just fine. Hey! And Uncle Fezzi said, let there be light, and there was. Okay, so we've got light. And it... Ooh. I'm using a battery pack. I don't know. Yeah, I'm using this battery pack here, which is already proved to be a little janky. We go up. And I don't know if it's perceptible on the camera, but it is dimming. And it is brightening up. These are nice because when you turn them on and off, when they come back on, they stay at the same. They stay at the same power. All right. So that's that. Now we're going to slide this piece of heat shrink up here just because we have put it on, and I haven't used this stuff yet, so I'm a little curious to see what it does. I'm a little curious. Let's see if we can do it with the soldering iron. Otherwise, I'm going to get the heat gun out. Like I said, I'm not a huge fan of I am not a huge fan of using open flame to heat shrink. Yeah, I'm gonna have to get the heat gun out. This is overkill on an epic level. He said the production pieces are almost definitely going to be, I'm going to use, they make hot glue that's actually flexible. So most likely these are going to be, sealed with flexible hot glue. I've just come to that determination. Okay, now we have assembled our electronics. Now let's make this video even longer, and let's do our counter bore. Let's do our counter bore on this. All right, so we're going to move the camera, and we're going to go over to my Jenke drill press, and we're going to counter bore this, and then we're going to mount this and fit this. And then once we do that, I'll sandblast this. I want this to be slick for the time being.